Welcome back to the Irish Bandit channel, or if you're new here, welcome to the channel. I, as always, am your host, the one, the only, the second Irish Bandit. We continue on with ranking some of my all-time favorite horror movie franchises. This time, we're ranking a franchise that I really kind of came late to because, well, honestly, kind of peeking behind the curtain here. When the first movie in this franchise came out, when the first movie in this franchise came out, I hadn't even met my ex-girlfriend at this point, but because that came out in 2004. But when the sequel came out, my ex-girlfriend was dead set against watching it, and I kind of did whatever she said. But when we broke up, I decided to go all in and watched every movie up to that point in this franchise. And I realized what I was missing out on watching this series, and it's had its ups and downs, don't get me wrong. But there's been more good than bad. Like, there's been bad, but when we get into the top five, I'm going to talk about what I loved about the top five movies I feel were the top five movies of this franchise. But enough rambling on here. Let's get down to it. We are looking at every movie so far in the Saw franchise, and that includes Spiral from the Book of Saw. Now, there has been rumors that there's going to be a 10th Saw movie coming out next year. I personally can't wait because, like I said, I love this franchise. It is, I don't want to say one of the best franchises because it does have its stinkers. And we're going to get into those ones today. Now, as opposed to the Halloween franchise, which we looked at last week, there's an even, right now, well, when I ranked those, there was an even number, not including Halloween Ends, which as the recording of this video, I haven't watched yet. So there was an even number, so I could do 6 on Tuesday, and then the remaining 6 the following Thursday. Because there's an odd number for the Saw franchise currently, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look through numbers 9, 8, 7, and 6 today. And then on Thursday, I'm going to take a look at my 5 favorite movies in the Saw franchise. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get right down to this. By far, I feel this is the worst movie in the franchise and probably one of my least favorite horror movies that I've ever seen. It came just a few years after the release of Saw: The Final Chapter. And man, this movie was hard to get into. And then with Spiral, they never followed up on it with everything that happened at the end of this one. So, and it was confusing, hard to follow. Let's talk about right now. Coming in at number 9, Jigsaw. So much like the Halloween franchise, I'll talk about things I liked about the movies and the things that I didn't like about them as well, especially when we're talking about these first 4 that I didn't particularly care for. Well, that's tough to say with what I have at number 7, but we'll talk about that when the time comes. So, Jigsaw, what did I like about this movie? I thought the kills were inventive. That's one thing you can always expect going into a Saw movie, is the kills. It ran with that torture porn moniker for quite a few movies after the first one, but we'll talk about that one later. So yeah, the kills were inventive. The story, though, was hard to follow. And there's this twist that comes that took me right out of the movie, honestly and truthfully. It was like, follow. What? I thought he died back in 3. And, well, okay, heavy spoiler warnings from here on out, because I can't talk about these movies without spoiler warnings. So if you haven't seen the Saw movies, go back and watch them. If you have seen, you know what I'm talking about. When in Jigsaw, John Kramer, who's long since been dead since Halloween 3, since Saw 3, just randomly pops up. And I'm like, what? That took me right out of the movie. But I guess it kind of did redeem itself, because you find out that everything that you think is happening now happened years prior. Kind of right about the time of John Kramer's turn to being Jigsaw. And then you have his apprentice helping out in the present day. And that's where it got confusing. It's like, what's happening now? What's happening then? What's happening? I'm confused. I don't like to be confused when watching a movie. I don't want to go into a movie thinking I need an advanced degree to figure everything out. You can call me simplistic, but I also don't want a movie to hold my hand as well, going through it. But either way, yeah, I thought Jigsaw was confusing. I did not care for it at all. But, I mean, as it goes with anything, if you loved it, fantastic. You found something in it that I couldn't find in it, and good on you for finding something to like about the movie. I didn't, but if you did, great. That's, movies are subjective, and if you liked it, that's great. I'm not going to knock you for liking something that I don't, because you found something that I didn't, and I think that's great. Maybe you can tell me what you found in it. That way I can rewatch it again and be like, oh, okay, I got you now. But for now, no. Jigsaw, absolute least favorite of the franchise. Until Jigsaw, this one was my least favorite of the franchise. Again, going back to that thing of being so confused by the end of it that I'm like, I have to go and sit down and turn my brain off for a while because it was making me think too much. Like, I don't mind a movie that will make me think, but you can't make me think like too much about it. I just go to be entertained for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and try not to think of it. No, we'll talk about that in an upcoming entry. But yeah, for the longest time, this one was my least favorite movie in the franchise. It wasn't one of my least favorite horror movies like Jigsaw, but this one was my least favorite, and it's still, even to this day, knowing everything that happens in it, it still confuses me. Coming in at number 8, Saw 4. The majority of Saw 4 takes place directly after what happened in Saw 3. That I don't mind. That kept in good context with everything that happened with the end of the movie with MFR slow ass Jeff, as James A. Janice likes to call him. I agree with that one because Jeff was slow as hell, but we'll talk about that when we talk about Saw 3 on Thursday, because that's in my top 5, but you'll find out where in my top 5. So yeah, Jeff absolutely was slow, but everything that happened following his death in Saw 3, spoilers, again, spoiler warning throughout this entire video, but we see what happens with Agent Strom going forward, and just, it got confusing near the end, but I was able to stay with it for the most part. Like, I thought Strom's journey was a pretty intense one, seeing what happens, especially when we see him again in Saw 5. We'll talk about that one on Thursday as well, because that's another one of my top 5 favorites. So, Agent Strom, and then just everything with Detective Hoffman going forward throughout this movie, seeing his ordeal and finding out that he is one of John Kramer's accomplices. That's what threw me for a loop. It was like, what? Really? Hoffman's okay? If that's the way you want to go, that's the way you're going. I didn't mind Saw 4. Okay, things I like about Saw 4, the story. For the most part, until the end with that whole, you think the game is over type thing. And finding out Strom was helping out John Kramer the whole time. But I thought the story was really good. I thought the characters were great in this movie as well. The traps, as always. One of the things I'll always rave about within the Saw franchise are the traps. They were so inventive and just made you go, oh, with a good majority of them. So, and I loved the beginning of this movie when they're doing John Kramer's autopsy. That was intense. I loved that. I thought that was fantastic. So, for the most part, yeah, I enjoyed Saw 4 up until that twist at the end. That's when it took me right out of it, and why I rank it so low. It just got really confusing when you're intertwining two different things. with Strom's story, and then, no, not Strom, Hoffman, and then it just randomly goes back to Saw 3. It's like, wait, because I thought this was happening at a different time. I didn't think this was happening concurrently with Saw 3. So you had two different traps going for two different people, or two different games, I should say, going for two different people. And it just kind of, that part just took me really out of it. It took me a while to jog my memory about that one. I'm going to have to sit down and watch the Saw movies again. It's a long time coming. So anyway, yeah. Saw 4, not great, but not terrible either, but it still ranks pretty low for me. Another one that ranks pretty low is what they said was going to be the final chapter. When is anything a final chapter in a horror movie? Take a look at Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th Part 4 was supposed to be the final chapter of Jason's saga. And look where we are today. He had, just looking at my collection, well, technically he wasn't in 5, but, Friday the 13th, 6, 7, 8, Jason Goes to Hell, Jason X, Freddy vs. Jason, the Friday the 13th remake. Nothing is ever final. Freddy's Dead, the final nightmare. No, it wasn't the final nightmare because we had like 3 more after that. Wes Craven's New Nightmare, Freddy vs. Jason, which we talked about before, and the 2010 remake. So nothing is ever final, which is why I kind of scoff when when a long-running horror franchise says, the epic final chapter. No, it's not. There's going to be more. And I was right. There was 2 more movies after this one. This one they tried to bill as in 3D, but I don't think that 3D aspect really worked well, honestly and truthfully. There are a lot of things to like about this movie, a lot more things to dislike about this movie. Coming in at number 9, 8, 7. Oh, it would be the 7th movie in the franchise. Coming in at number 7, Saw 3D, the final chapter, part 7, but too long of a tale. So what did I like about Saw, the final chapter in 3D, Saw 7? Give the longest name possible. I love the casting of Sean Patrick Flanery in this movie because I'm a huge fan of the Boondock Saints movies, which you see over my shoulder right there. See it right there. You can see it better now that my PC's out of the way. And, you take a look at Saw 5, which we'll talk about on Thursday. Carlo Rota and Julie Benz, are in that movie. Carlo Rota was in the first Boondock Saints movie, and Julie Benz was in Boondock Saints 2. So you get the guy who played Connor McManus, of course, to play Bobby Dagan in this one. And I thought he did a fantastic job of being this snake oil salesman, saying he was in a game of jigsaws, but he never really was. He was doing it to make a buck. And then he was put in an actual game by Hoffman, so carrying out John's last wishes. So I liked that. I loved the reveal of Dr. Lawrence Gordon at the end, because Gordon was one of my favorite characters, because he's played by one of my favorite actors, Cary Elwes. So to see him pop back up for this movie, because he hadn't been in since the first movie. We had illusions of Dr. Lawrence throughout the series, but nothing ever really confirmed. A couple things happened along the way that I thought, maybe that could be Gordon, and that, my suspicions were justified after seeing all that. So I loved that. I loved the aspect of them having a Jigsaw support group. That was friggin' awesome, and getting to see all these past characters from the franchise. Like the secretary in Saw 6, who was in one of the traps for not William Atherton, that's an actor, for the character William. He was an executive we'll talk about Saw 6 in part 2. But anyway, so I love that. I didn't really dig the traps in this one, honestly and truthfully. There was one that really, there were a couple that really made my skin crawl, because I can sit through somebody being disemboweled. I can sit through multiple slashings. I can, one of my favorite scenes in a horror movie of all time is Nightmare on Elm Street, the original, where Glenn's bed erupts with blood. I can handle all that. There are two traps in the Saw universe that made me squirm. I'll get to the other one on part 2 of this two-parter. But this one, because I have a thing about eyes. Any movie that has somebody's eye getting plucked out, poked out, gouged, whatever, makes me want to throw up. That scene in Kill Bill when the bride plucks out Ellie Driver's eye and steps on it, I can't watch that scene at all. My eyes are coming like, no, oh God. So when you have a trap where two sharp pipes are going into a person's eyes, and one going in her mouth, but that one doesn't bother me as much as the ones going in her eyes. Yeah, I'm not having a good time. Some of the other traps were kind of mundane. Although I did love the final trap with Bobby's girlfriend. That was intense. So that one was a good one. The whole gimmick around it being 3D in the final chapter of Saw, I don't think the 3D aspect worked as well as they thought it would. And I knew it wasn't going to be the final chapter. It may have been the final chapter for this portion, but I knew there'd be more. And I was ready. You know, Jigsaw came out just a few years after that, and then Spiral was released just a couple of years ago. So, and another one on the way. So Saw Never Truly Ends, which can be a good or bad thing. I don't know which one. But as for Saw, the final chapter in 3D, part 7, it's one I can take or leave. If I'm in a particular mood for it, I'll watch it because it's okay. I think we're getting into the ones that I think are okay. Like, they're dumb, but they're watchable at least. They got that going for them. So yeah. Saw the final chapter 3D, part 7, Jigsaw's Revenge. I mean, that'd be fitting for this, because this was Jigsaw's Revenge. It was okay, watchable, but oh, to round out this video, we're going to talk about the most recent movie in the Saw franchise. I didn't mind it. I heard a lot of people say they didn't care for it. I didn't mind it. Although, there is something that I will talk about that, we'll talk about this in a second about subtext. But I thought it was a good movie. It had a great cast and a great story, and they didn't bring back Jigsaw for it, at least. I shouldn't say that. I love Tobin Bell. I think he is a icon of the horror franchise as John Kramer. But Jigsaw's presence wasn't needed. Or John Kramer's presence wasn't needed for this, so it's good they didn't bring him back for it. Anyway, rounding out this video and coming in at number 6, I think we're at number 6, 9, 8, 7. Yeah, coming in at number 6, Spiral from the Book of Saw. Smell like Porky Pig, which is fitting for this movie because it was so deep with pigs. What I liked about Spiral was the casting, first and foremost, especially when you have names like Chris Rock and Samuel L. Jackson, who I don't think Samuel L. Jackson has ever been in a horror movie before, so that was really awesome. And then again, Chris Rock, just a titan of acting, really. I was going to say comedy, but this isn't a comedy movie, so, but we know him best from comedies. But his character worked so well here, and with how everything ended with this movie, I hope, if we're going back to this storyline, I hope we see more of it. I love the villain in this movie, his motives, and just his reveal of how his motivations behind everything, doing everything. I love the traps in this movie. This was one of the most ingenious ones. Oh, back to the casting. Marisol Nichols. Absolutely loved her during her time on Riverdale, when Riverdale was watchable. But I thought she was great in this movie as well. Again, the traps were great. There was some ingenious traps in this. The one thing that I got to be careful how I say this. There's a way to how do I put this? When it comes to subtext, you can come at it one of two ways. You can come at it gently, organically, and just have it build. Or you can do what Spiral did, and they can beat you over the head with the subtext in this movie. Now, we all know, again, I got to be careful how I put this. We know what the current situation is in the world today with everything that happened during the summer of 2020 and the Black Lives Matter movement. If the producers of Spiral wanted that for subtext, there was a better way to go about it. Like, I'm not saying it's an issue that shouldn't be talked about. It absolutely is, 100%. But the way they did it, it was beating you over the head with subtext. It's like, do you get it yet? Do you get it yet? Yes, we got it. Thank you. You could have gone about this a different way. But yeah, like I said, it's an issue that needs to be talked about. Damn straight it does. But do we need to have it beaten over our heads with metaphor? I don't think so. I think they could have gone about that a different way. I'm not going to say better way because, but they could have gone about it a different way instead of just shoving it right in our face. But that's probably why I'm not a producer of movies, I look at things from a logical standpoint. But anyway, back to the movie itself. I thought the movie was good. A lot of people didn't like it. I can see their point. I thought it was good. It could have been better, could have been worse, but I mean, for me, it was middle of the road. It was watchable. It had some humorous moments in it, of course, with somebody like Chris Rock in it. Of course, there's going to be humorous moments. They won't be laugh out loud funny moments like we know Chris Rock can do from his years of being a stand-up comedian. But they were still funny nonetheless. He had some great one-liners. And again, I thought some of the traps in here were fantastic. One of my favorites was the glass bottle recycling trap. That one was great. So yeah, again, Spiral was just kind of middle of the road for me. I didn't hate it. I didn't absolutely love it. I liked it. It was okay. So there we go. 4 down, 5 to go, and we'll get to those 5 on Thursday. But what do you think so far of my ranking of the Saw franchise? Let me know in the comment section down below. I'd really love to read your opinion. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. I'd really appreciate that. In the description, you're going to see all the ways you can help support this channel. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and Reddit. You can pick up your Irish Bandit merchandise from my Redbubble shop. You can purchase my very first novel, Shade Falling, on Amazon. And now you can buy me a coffee. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. And if you're already subscribed, tap the bell and you'll be notified whenever a brand new video goes live. Like I said, I will be back Thursday with my top 5 favorite movies in the Saw franchise. Then on Friday, I'll have another playthrough of Dead by Daylight. This time I'm playing as Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies. Whew, I gotta catch my breath. That was a lot. And then Saturday and Sunday, I'll be back with more Blair Witch. So be sure to join me for that as one Halloween of a Halloween continues on. Almost forgot it, but I got there at the end. So until then, talk again very, very soon.